Automation is pretty deep within Studio One, so covering every detail and setting is beyond the scope of this tutorial, but what we will cover in this section will definitely provide you with a solid foundation in the two types of automation that are available in Studio One, as well as how to edit your automation and important concepts to keep in mind. So let's begin with the most simple way you can go about recording automation for parameters within a VST instrument. Now I've got a MyTie loaded up on an instrument track here. If I click this, we can go ahead and see what's going on with it. I've got a bass preset loaded, so let's go ahead and play this back and hear how it sounds before adding any automation. Okay, so a pretty basic passage, and what if we'd like to add some movement to that, say with the filter cutoff? Now there's a couple of different ways we can go about this, and the first way that we'll look at is recording part automation, and that's automation that's going to be contained within our MIDI part, and wherever we move the MIDI part, that automation will go with it. So the way that we would do this is just simply hitting record, and I actually have the filter cutoff connected to a knob on my external controller, so I'm going to use that to adjust. So I'm going to come back to the beginning of the song and then enter into record. Okay, I'll press the space bar to stop, and if you notice, our filter cutoff knob now has this circle with a hollow center, letting us know that there is part automation on this parameter. So if I go ahead and close this out, then we can see our automation within our MIDI part. And let me go ahead and delete this extra part out. Now, how can we go about editing this automation if we'd like? We would simply double click and we're taken to the editor. And then we can see down at the bottom in our part automation lane, we have cutoff that has been added, and we can see all of our automation points and everything that was recorded. And we can simply click on a point and move that however we'd like. If we have snap on, it's off right now, but if I were to go ahead and activate this, then these automation points will snap to whatever we have set as our quantized value. So right now it's set to quarter notes. If I were to change this to 16th notes, then we can see that that's snapping by 16th notes, at least horizontally. If I hover the mouse up above, we have a trim tool, so I can push and pull down certain parts of our automation. Now I'm going to go ahead and select all of these automation points, press delete to get rid of those, because I'd like to show, first we can remove any automation by clicking on remove. Now if we'd like to draw in automation manually, we can click on one of these tabs, right click, choose add. Our filter is here. If we expand that folder out, we have the cutoff. I'll add that and then close out, and we can see our tab is back. And then at this point I can just activate the paint tool, and let's come to the freehand. And I can then draw in the automation as I'd like. Now, if you noticed, for the paint tool, it has a lot of different modes here. And if I were to choose, say, the saw mode, when I click and draw this in, it's going to input a saw waveform for our automation. And it's going to add that at whatever value that we have set for our quantized value. So let's go ahead and give that a listen back real quick. Okay, so those are the ways in which we can create part automation recordings and how we can edit with the part automation. So I select those. I'm going to go ahead and delete those out. Let's close out of the editor. And I'm actually going to come back in and take that cutoff out. Now let's take a look at the second way, or the second form of automation within Studio One, and that is working with automation envelopes. So let's go ahead and reopen our MyTie, and now this time I'm going to make use of the automation modes here. So if we click on this where it says auto off, we have different automation modes. So read is basically locked and it's going to read any automation that you've recorded. If you make any adjustments, those will not overwrite what you have. Now we have touch. So if you have this selected, anytime you touch a parameter, automation will begin. We have latch, and with this, any movement will begin the automation recording. So if you touch a parameter, it won't begin the automation, but if you move it, it will when you use the latch setting. Now write is just going to overwrite any automation based on what you have the parameter set at that time. But we're going to make use of the touch here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning of our song and play back. I'll press spacebar to stop, and now you can see we have that same circle, but this is filled in, letting us know that we are working with envelope automation. And it is layered on top of our MIDI part, but we can click on this automation icon here and expand that out, and we can see we have an entire track for our automation. And since we're working in this mode, Studio One automatically switched to an automation view. We can always hide that by clicking here, but we can still access that automation by coming here down to the bottom left corner and clicking there to expand that out. And then we can make any edits. We can add points. We can remove points. We also have our trim tool where we can push and pull between the points. And if you notice, we have a circle in the center of our automation points, and here we can add in curves if we'd like to our automation. These are pretty close together, so it's difficult to see what's going on there, but let's get rid of a few of these points. Now we can see that a bit clearer. Now if we'd like to disable the automation without deleting everything, we have this power button that we can access there, and just go ahead and turn that off. When we play back, our automation is silenced. Okay, so those are the two ways that you can go about recording automation within Studio One. We have our MIDI part automation, and we have our automation envelopes. Now I'm going to go ahead and click this to hide that envelope. And let's open up the console because I'd like to show how we can go about automating panning and our level faders. So I'm going to click to add a new audio track, and that is now within our console. So if we'd like to automate the fader or the panning, we have our automation mode here just as we do in the MyTie. So we would just click, I'll choose touch, and then now I will play back. And let's make some adjustments to the panning. Okay, and so that is as simple as that. I'll close out the mix console. Here's that audio track that we brought in, and again, I can click here to expand that out, and then we have access to our volume and panning automation below. Now, before we wrap up, just know that if we Control comma or Command comma on the Mac to access the options menu, we have an advanced tab here at the top, and then within this window we have automation. Just so that you are aware, we have some choices that we can make about how automation is going to behave when we are working within Studio One, and you can access those here.